Okay. Welcome, everybody. I guess it's lights, camera, action. We're recording now, so appreciate everybody coming out and joining us tonight. This is the ERC Net Manager Training. On Tuesday, we had the Net Operator Training, and I expect we have a lot of people that were on that call. I know we had some people that were late to that call because I think we didn't quite make it clear enough which time zone the time was in. And so hopefully we have that clear for everybody. But if you missed last night's training or part of it for the Net Operator Training, we will have that recording available on the ERCconnect website under the training menu. It's going to be another day before we can get the video all processed and up there. So look for that. We will put announcements out on the all the areas pages for those recordings, so you can see that all this training, as well as we'll send out an email. So hopefully everybody that wants to see that will, and we'll move things along. So before I jump into the details of this slide, let me just stop sharing for just a minute, and let me explain something that I think might be helpful. Rick mentioned that we have had access to this system for quite a while. I looked the other day and we got logs that go back to 22 years, which is just crazy to me. And so it's very much different underneath, even though some of the top level things haven't changed. But behind the scenes, there's been a lot of technology changes, a lot of updates, a lot of modernization. And so a lot of the groundwork we've been making for actually quite a while now is now just starting to be visible. So one of the first things is this new net management tool, and we've got other tools that are coming right behind it, and that I think will all be helpful. Over the years, we have found that this tool has been instrumental in allowing this capability to grow as fast as priesthood leaders wanted it to grow. A lot of people in this area have thought that we've been kind of out proselytizing or pushing the ERC program, and we haven't. It's really interesting to see how things have grown. For a long time, things just moved very slowly, and there were times, and there may be some that are on this call that remember some of these days, but there was times when I was net control operator for the Idaho Falls Bishop Storehouse net, and I was the only operator on frequency that night. It was just me, myself, and I. And fast forward to today, and we can't have one net there's basically 3 coordinating councils or approximately that are supported by the Idaho Falls Bishop Storehouse. And it's too big. So they're divided into 4, what we call today regional nets, but that's about to change as we transition to coordinating councils and restructure our nets, as well as just how everything is currently run here, and kind of move away from the storehouse model and underneath the church hierarchical model, where we've got things organized in our areas and the coordinating councils and so forth. So we've been able to grow, and there's been times when it's like somebody flipped the switch, and it just started growing. And I've reached out multiple times when we saw huge increases and some very interesting things I won't go into tonight, but movement from stakes stake presidents didn't ever really respond when we'd call them every 6 months to a year and say, "Have you got a stake specialist president?" No, we don't have anybody, and they kind of weren't that interested. I'm sure you've probably seen that as well. And then one day, I started getting calls from stake presidents saying that they felt that they needed to get a stake specialist in place, and multiple in one day actually happened. I won't go into all the details, but the nice thing is, because we had this tool, it allowed us to manage the information, manage the radio nets, keep track of people, keep track of stake specialists, and priesthood leaders, etc. Because otherwise it's really tough to do this, especially if you're like working at the area level or the coordinating council level or multi-coordinating council level. It's hard to know who you have to deal with and what is you might think things are going well, but if you can kind of peek into the activity level of radio nets, for example, you get a much better idea of what's kind of happening and where you have areas that might need some attention and where things are just going really well. You're just you're flying blind. And so the tools that we built in this website are to help us so we don't have to fly blind, so to speak. And so because we've had it, there have been peaks. I've not actually gone and plotted this out. We're going to because we have a new reporting tool coming. And so some of our nets and other things, we're going to be able to go back and literally look at like 22 years of history and kind of see what's happening when we get this reporting tool kind of finished up and look at some of the charts and graphs. And I'm sure we're going to see some big spikes at certain times. Why we had those spikes, I don't know. But it was just the right time, I think. And I think there's a reason why we have the current direction and the current momentum. It's time, and I think there's a reason for all this. So as we approach this, I encourage everyone to spend plenty of time on your knees and listening to the Spirit on how you need to help move things forward. Some on the call tonight are in leadership positions within the church and within the ERC, and others might be here just helping out with the net. But yeah, all things considered, there's just a lot of interesting things that are happening, and it's great because it's clear to see the Lord's hand in all of this. Um, so bottom line is this tool and tools that are coming right behind it are going to be very good tools for areas, coordinating councils, and also stakes and wards, because the same tools are going to be made available all the way through. In fact, some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, there'll be kind of simplified versions that will be automatically available to wards and stakes. So if you're a stake specialist, you'll be able, and you're not currently managing a net through ERCconnect, you'll just be able to go and basically activate it and start picking your net control operators, and you're off and running. And so that's going to make it a nice and easy tool for stakes to kind of get going that haven't been going, and for them to help their wards using the same kind of tool. So this, I mentioned last night, this is not an official church website. It is supported by the church, but the church actually it was going. Actually, it was. I'll just say that the planning was to move forward to it. In fact, we were asked to remove this is not an official website from the bottom of the pages, which we did. And then further discussions sometime later with others within church headquarters, they said, you know what, it might be better if that stays apart. And I kind of agree. The church is true, but in any large organization, there's lots of politics and red tape. And so it's nice not having that, and we can actually move quickly with some of these things, so we can be the best tool that we can and the best support. So just know that this is not an official tool. Its use is optional, like everything else in the church. Even official things are always optional. We always have our agency. It's an eternal principle. So that applies to this website. If it works for you, then I'm sure you'll use it. And if it doesn't, then you can find another solution that will work. We believe we've made something that is fairly flexible as far as the net management, and we hope will be a good tool for you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and go back to sharing my screen here. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay. There we go. So before we get into the specifics of the net management piece of it, I gave the net control operators a quick view of it last night. We're going to go into the details tonight, but there's some concepts that I want to make sure are clear, and I think it'll make everything else make more sense as we get into it. So first off, and this is what we talked about last night, with the ERC Net Management System, there are kind of two types of users. You have the net control operators, and then who create and fill the roles. And you have net managers, who are typically also net control operators, who select the net participants. They design the layout and what kind of information gets pulled into the roles. They design the preamble script that is used by the net control operators, and they have the ability to control and manage messaging, such as email and soon to be SMS text messaging and other messaging that you can use to communicate with your net participants. So just know that you've got net control operators and you have net managers. The biggest difference is the net managers have the ability to go in there and make these changes that we're going to show you tonight. The net control operators can do everything else. In fact, they can make a lot of changes on their own, like we discussed in the net operator training, but all the changes they make only affect themselves. The changes that the net manager makes can affect all the net control operators. So that's the biggest difference. So all radio nets are different, even in certain geographic locations that are close, that work together. Everybody kind of has a certain way that they like to do things or that they have needs to do. Some nets are done because that's the way they've always been done. And are they the best for church emergency communications? Sometimes yes, sometimes maybe not. But doesn't matter. They're all different. And this might be an opportunity as you go in and start changing your nets to kind of sit back and maybe reevaluate your nets to say, are we running this net the way that we should be for church emergency communications? In other words, emergency communications that support our communities and our priesthood leaders. And are we operating this like an amateur radio net, for example, that might be part of a club? In some cases, it's hard to tell the difference between a club net and some ERC nets. That's not to criticize, it's just a point that are we doing it the right way? Maybe, maybe not. It's just an opportunity for us to sit back and reevaluate. But they're all different. So ERCconnect Manager it allows you to customize the nets however you want. You can customize them on a per net basis. So in other words, every net can be different than every other net on the system. And it can be further customized per operator. The net control operator, they can take what they're given and they can do things like move the columns around and change the sort order and kind of change some of the tools that they use. But all the information they get and the columns that are there, that's all managed by the net managers. So in other words, everybody has the same information as defined by the net manager, but the net operator or the net control operators, they can just change their experience, if you want to look at it that way. They can change the width of the columns and they can move the column order around and they can change the sort order. But the operators that show up on the roll and other things like that, that's all handled by the net managers. So what is a net roll? It's like a Sunday school roll where we check somebody in. So you know the rolls that get passed around or somebody walks around and checks. It's not much different in that we're checking people in. Biggest difference between like a Sunday school roll and a net roll is we oftentimes ask for additional pieces of information to be provided by the net participants when you check in. Check in with your call sign, check in with your with a signal report for the net control operator or other pieces of information. Some nets actually do really well at requesting information that might even be requested in a real emergency. And so they come up with ways for information to be passed around. So there's training opportunities that you can do with the nets and that will be supported by this, depending on how you create the rosters. A roster, just to get our terminology straight, is basically the layout that we're doing for all the roles. Once that roster is created that we're going to be creating tonight, you create roles that basically just start filling in the roles. So think of it as if you had a role every Sunday and you're passing out a new sheet every week, that's basically what the roles are, is it's just a new sheet for that net. But the roster is all the people that are on the net. That's maybe a simple way to explain it. And we record who checks into the net and again, what information is reported. And that can change and it can change all the time. And it will definitely change from net to net. It's interesting to see as we put this together, we talked with a lot of people and I was surprised at the diversity of the radio nets. I wasn't really surprised, but in some cases I was like, wow, that's really different. And there were some really good ideas out there. And so it's been kind of fun to kind of talk to everybody and see how they do their nets. So one of the most important parts of this is the net participants. Who is on these roles? And so in the ERC Net Manager, there's two ways that we put people on the rolls. They're either automatically selected, and I'll tell you what that means in just a minute, or they're manually selected. When I say they're automatically selected, it's actually automatically, and they can be manually selected. So let me give you an example. You might have a stake net, and you automatically select all the amateur operators if you're going to build an amateur net out of your stake, the operators in your stake. So someone moves into your stake, they would automatically show up on your net roll. And we're actually moving people around all the time. As people move, we just move them into a new stake. And as soon as we move them in the ERC system to another stake and ward, they automatically show up on all the appropriate radio nets and things. So that's what I mean by automatically selected. So you might have a stake net, but you might have somebody that's in maybe a neighboring stake that likes to check into your net. And so even though they're not going to show up automatically because they're not in that stake, you can also add people so that they show up every week manually on the rolls. You always have visitors, so manually selected is not a visitor. You always have visitors on every roll, but a manually one is somebody that's manually added to the roll and to the roster, and they show up on every roll, every single net that you call. So you've automatic people that are automatically selected, and then people that are manually selected. So you also have nets that don't have any automatically selected people. They're only manually selected. So one example of this that's quite common actually is for like an HF net, because we have a lot of operators, many of which have shiny new Baofeng radios, and they're great on 2 meters, but they're never going to get on HF. And so we don't want to bring in people automatically to some of those nets. You can, and they would eventually drop off the net from inactivity. But some of those nets, they might be better for a fully manually selected. So you can have automatically or manually a combination, or it can be just manually. We also have another category I should have put on here, and that's where there's nobody on the roster. And that's for a brand new thing that I'm actually kind of excited about. I'll tell you about it here in a minute, but it's basically, think of it as all visitors. So there's nobody that shows up on the roll, but as you start copying, putting in names or call signs, then you start filling out the roll as you go. And so one of the uses for that is like in an actual emergency. If you have something where it's not a full lights out major disaster, for instance, in this area, we have wildfires, and oftentimes we have all of our radio communications, our telephones, our cell phones are up, except for the ones that get burned down. And we can use these tools. And so this could be a helpful tool in that case. And I'll show you how that goes when we get to that point. So when we look at the automatically selected net types, the first category we have are church organizations. So you can select like all the operators from an area. So the United States Central area, the United States Southwest area, the Canada area, basically all 7 areas in North America, you could create a net. Would you? I don't know, maybe. It's kind of tough to imagine a net that you'd want everybody, but for consistency, we allow you to create an area net. So if you want to, you can create an area net. The next is a coordinating council. Coordinating council, for those who may not be familiar, is basically just a group of stakes that have been organized in the part of the church hierarchy. So you've got an area 70 that's over a coordinating council or multiple coordinating councils, and that's just a group. It could be 6 to 10 or 12, or some of the coordinating councils are quite large. Some of them are relatively small. It just depends on the part of the country they're in. But if you want to have a net that consists of a coordinating council, all the operators in a coordinating council, you would create a net and say, I want the operators automatically selected from a coordinating council. If you're going to do a stake net, you just a stake net, and you select from any one of the stakes in North America. With a coordinating council, you've got all the coordinating councils in North America in the system. This data, by the way, in case you're wondering, gets updated once a month from data provided by church headquarters. So we have all of the church organization information and operators tied back to that. So that's how we have everything kind of organized and tied back so that we can organize things like this way. This will support any type of net, basically. So amateur radio might be the most common. It's certainly not the only one. In fact, it might even become not the most common one as other technologies such as GMRS. And if MeshCore keeps going like it's been, holy cow, that thing is just going crazy. Some areas more than others, but around here, we're seeing in like we got like 3 coordinating councils, a little bit more, but 3 coordinating councils that are in pretty close geographic proximity. And we're seeing on average like 2 repeaters going up every day. And we've seen that for the last multiple weeks. It's just kind of nuts how this thing is growing. And so we're really getting things quite extended here. So we're going to start seeing, I think, probably some MeshCore nets. And so you can use the system to create a MeshCore net. You could use the system to create a Starlink net. So we actually have some plans in multiple areas, but in the central area specifically, we're looking at providing some Starlink systems around the area, and having a Starlink net where we actually get on Starlink and have a call like this by a Starlink, and so we could create a Starlink net so we can keep track of that and what the participation is. If you want to have a ward net, you would just select the ward that you want, and then you would get all the operators in that ward. If it's an amateur net, it's only going to put amateur radio operators on the net with a call sign. It's kind of a special one. If you select anything else, it doesn't really matter. If you select Starlink, we're not doing anything special. It's just a way for us to categorize the nets. But if it has an amateur net, it does make sure that the operators that go on that roster do have a call sign. The only other one that's special is the shares net. If it's a shares, if you're not familiar, that's a U.S. Department of Homeland Security capability where they hand out, they're not licenses, but they're call signs. They're basically station call signs. And it does require a shares call sign to operate on those frequencies, which are outside of the amateur radio bands. And so if you have a shares net, it will make sure that all the operators that show up. So you could go and say, I want a coordinating count. You could actually do here, this would be an example of an area net. If you create an area net and you make it a shares net, the only people that are going to show up on there are everybody within the area that has a shares call sign. If that makes sense. So there is a purpose for having the area, same with the coordinating council. You can have a ward net, could be a GMRS/FRS. It doesn't require a GMRS license because we got combined FRS in there as well. So if you select this is a GMRS FRS net and it's a ward net, you basically get everybody that's in there. So that's the church organizations. So we also have another way, because we have found that there are primarily starting with the coordinating council level, we see multiple coordinating councils that work together, especially for emergency response. For instance, in Texas, there's areas where they have multiple coordinating councils that work together for hurricane response. And so you could create what we call a multi-coordinating council. And we do that through groups. So each of the standard church organization groups or categories, such as area, coordinating council, stake, and ward, they can be grouped together. So we could, and we have, just for consistency's sake, we made a United States group that has all the 6 areas in the United States. Don't know if we're ever going to want that, but we have the capability of doing that. But coordinating council, much more likely. If you've got 2 or more coordinating councils, they can be grouped together. And once that group is created, it can be selected in the Net Manager. The creation of those groups is handled outside of the Net Manager. And so you would contact your area specialist or the ERC help desk team, and they would work with the area and make sure that we got the appropriate approval with each area. And we would create, for instance, if you want a coordinating council group with, these 3 or 4 coordinating councils, we can create the group, give it a name, and as soon as that's created, the groups all the coordinating councils together, it'll now show up in the Net Manager, and you can now say this is a multi-coordinating council group. Same thing with the stake group. Oftentimes, you've got maybe you've got 3 stakes that are part of a coordinating council, but these three stakes are kind of in a close geographic area and they want to work together for maybe a combined radio net. You could create a stake group outside of a coordinating council that allows these stakes to work together. Same thing with the ward. In the Ogden area, for example, I don't know if there's anybody on the call here, but there are 3 wards, I'm told, that work together and they have a combined net from the 3 wards. 2 of the wards are in a different stake than the other one, and two of the wards, or at least one of the wards, is in a different coordinating council. So a ward in a different coordinating council, different stakes, they work together, and it doesn't matter with the net manager. You can group any 3 wards together that you want to, as long as it makes sense. So just remember, you have the groups that are just what they say. You're just grouping areas or coordinating councils or stakes or wards together for purposes of radio nets, and it can also be used for the new email system that's coming here in a few short weeks. So now let's talk about we have some specialty types besides the manually entered, putting operators on a net and the automatically selected ones. The first one is manually selected, where every operator on there is manually selected. When I say there's no operators put on automatically, it's not entirely true, because you can go in and put people, I'll show you how. It might be a manually selected net, and to where the only people that are on there are who you put there manually, and then they show up. Sorry, I misspoke. Forget about what I just mentioned. The manually selected is all people that you just put on there. The other people that would show up is if you're going to have net control operators, and you can make the net control operators show up as a separate group. Some of the nets call their nets that way. They want to know what net control operators are on frequency. And so often, and those nets will sometimes ask for the net control operators to check in first. Do we have any net control operators on frequency? And they'll check them in. If your net does that, it's just you just turn the little switch on, and that will take all of those net control operators, pull them out of their other organizations, and then put them in a special group at the top of the roll. So it makes it kind of handy. Okay, so whoops, didn't mean to do that. So here's the new one that I'm actually really excited about, the open net, where it's all visitors. The more that I thought about it, the more that it makes a lot of sense, and for things that we've seen in our area, it would have actually been a very handy tool, but we've never talked about it before. And the idea didn't come from anything but me sitting in sacrament meeting one day, listening to the prelude music and watching everybody walk in, and the kids chatter. And then I had this thought out of nowhere saying, you know what, it'd be kind of cool. Tells you I've been thinking about this stuff too much, but it'd be really neat. What if we had an all visitor net type, to where you basically could set up a net that's for emergency operations, for example, that you just create a role at whenever you might need one. So you can have it already set up. You can even have all your net control operators set up so they can have access to it. And then if something happens on any given day, you go in there, you create a role, and you just start, whoever shows up, who's on frequency, you just start recording their, if it's an amateur net, you just start typing in call signs, and it just brings them in as you go, and it creates the role on the fly. So it's never been used yet, but I think it's kind of a cool idea, even if it was my own idea. I think it has merit, and I think I think we're going to set one up here, because we're at a very dry level here in Eastern Idaho. And I was at an activity here a couple of weeks ago in Jefferson County. I was invited to a meeting, and I was there, and afterwards I was talking to the fire chief for the Central Fire District, and he mentioned that in the month of March, that they had already had more fire call outs than all of last year combined in the month of March alone. And so he's expecting a really busy season this year as things continue to dry out and get closer. So we're going to get prepared for those nets, and I think this open net might be a helpful thing for us. The next thing that we're going to show you is the roster layout. So there are 22 standard columns to choose from. Could you create a roster that has all 22 columns? You could. I wouldn't recommend it because it's going to be, a football field long. But the idea is select the columns that make sense for you and put it on the net. We'll talk more here as soon as we get in there, but just know that there are 22 standard columns to choose from. Many of those are display only. In other words, you're not typing anything into those columns. They're bringing information in. So you have an operator and you want to know their area, it'll bring their area in. Their coordinating council, it'll display their coordinating council or their stake or their ward or other information. And so you can select whatever you want. And then you have 6 custom columns. So you give those custom columns a name, and then you make that any kind of a field that you want. So if you want to have somebody say that you have a net and you ask a question, do you have whatever? And it's just basically a yes or no, you can make it a checkbox. So all the net control operator has to do is check. And whatever that field is, it's checked. Or you can make it a counter where you counting up or down, and it's got a little plus and minus, and you can count up or down. So there's an automatic counter as one of the standard columns for traffic. So if you have a net where you frequently have radio traffic passed, you can add that traffic column as a standard column, and it's got one of those counters. It just goes up and down. That's all it does, is that you can either type the number in, or you can just plus or minus and tick the counter up or down. Sometimes you have nets where you're asking the operator to check in, and they're giving you one of 2 or 3 or 4 different options, basically, that you're asking them to check in. Let us know about this. If it's something where the answers are kind of standard, you can create a select box, which is a drop down list. So you say, I'm going to create this custom column is going to be called favorite color, whatever it is, and you can have like red, blue, green, orange, and then you just get, when you get to that cell on the roster, and you select the select box, it'll just drop down, and you can select whichever one it is. And then you've got 2 different types of text boxes. We have a simple text, which is you don't have very much space on one of the columns, but sometimes you're asking like for a signal report on how they hear the net control operator, and you're just going to type in 595711, whatever the report is. You can make that a simple text because that's not very long. You can see it right there in the column. If you type beyond that column, it's no problem. It'll let you keep typing for actually a long ways, but you just can't see very much of it unless you kind of scroll down the field. If you do have something that might be a longer amount of text you want to type, so there's a standard column called notes. So if you want to add a note to anything that a particular operator wants to report in, if you make it a large text, as soon as you click on that, you get a pop-up, and you get kind of a little text editor where you can type a lot more text. You can see a lot more of it. You can drag it, make it bigger. And so that's what the large text is. They both hold the same amount of text. It's really just how they're displayed. And the biggest difference with the large text, you can't enter anything into it when you click on it or hit enter or a space bar when you're on the field. It does the pop-up, and then you have to save it. So it adds an extra step. If you just have simple information, you can do the simple text, and you can type something in, hit enter, and you're on to the next column. And the last one is time. Time was added primarily because we are supporting shares nets. The church has been given approval and permission to be able to use the DHS HF shares program. And shares radio nets are special in that every net has to be reported back to the shares program office. And so the ERC management system will be doing the automatic reporting for anybody that creates a shares net. And so there's monthly reporting where it takes all the roles that are conducted for that net during the month, and it has to put it in a special format, data format, and send electronically to the program office. So ERCconnect will do that automatically. But one of the things that they ask for is they have operators check in and check out with a specific time. So they check them in at a certain time and they check them out at a certain time. So there's a time field where it just tracks the time and it knows how to handle time. It's got a little time method, and it'll just put in the current time, or you can change it to another time. But those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different types of fields that you can create with a custom column. So hopefully that makes sense. Once we get into it, just having this background will help, and then we'll jump in and see this all. The next is a duplicate of the last. Okay, that's all. That's what I thought. All right, let's move that out of the way. Okay, so for those that didn't hear last night, we will be activating this new system actually tonight after we get finished. Some people already have access to it because they're part of our beta testers that have been helping us do things. There are also some ERC area leadership that are area administrators. They already have some access as well. But for most of the net control operators, they haven't been able to get into it yet. And there's a lot of people that want to. Received a lot of email and lots of messages. So it will go active. So I mentioned before that there is a whole new look and feel coming to this website. We're looking at closer to the fall time frame before we release that, because we have some other things that need to happen ahead of then. But in the meantime, we kind of have this old legacy system. And I say legacy, if you look at the current design of this, if you're familiar with the Wayback Machine, it is a website that takes snapshots of websites, and it's been doing that for, I don't know, 20 something years now. You can go back and look up any website that's on the internet, and you go back in time and you can see what that website looked like on a certain day. It's kind of cool. Well, if you went back and you looked at LDS.org, it would look just like this, except for all the ERC content. So this was patterned after the old church website, except for the church did something really cool. They modernized it and they kept on building it. We kind of kept the old stuff. And so that's what we're changing. We're going to give it the new look and feel. But for right now, there is some old stuff. So up in the top, very top bar, wait, can everybody see this? Make sure I'm still sharing. Am I sharing? I'm not sharing. Wait a minute, was I sharing all those slides? Okay, good. I just stopped. All right. I think I've been up since 4 and it's starting to show. Okay, let me get rid of this. Okay. So up here at the top of the website, you have the update profile that's been. Those that have some additional privileges, and we'll see a net management. And if you are I'm sorry, not net management, you see the website management, and you can log out, and there's a link to be able to email the ERC help desk. And that's actually kind of a change that's been here. But if you are a net operator, a net control operator, you will automatically show up right here. How do you get to be a net control operator? The net managers will make you a net control operator. So a net manager can make any ERCconnect operator that's in the system, they can make them a net control operator for that net. Doesn't require anybody else. It's all up to the net managers. So as soon as we enable this, and all of your net control operators will now see this new net management link. So that's the link. There's no more having to go. For those who haven't seen it, there's another website administration with other stuff that we have on the website. And that used to be how we got into the legacy system. From this point forward, and we'll be using this net management link. So when you click on it, what you see next will depend on how many radio nets you are a net control operator for. Okay. If you're only a net control operator or a net manager for one net, you will not see this menu, this list, because it's really a menu of the radio nets that you can narrow down by an area. I'm, as an administrator, I can see all the nets in the area, and so I have many to choose from. If you only have 2 nets that you're a net control operator, you only see 2 listed here. If you only have 1, it will skip this and take you to the next next menu. Except, I take that back, except if you're a net manager, you will still see this because you need to be able to get into the configuration menu here. So I'm going to use the same thing we had last night. I've got a net that I created that we'll delete when we're done playing here, but I call it Kevin Test because I'm not very original. But let's go ahead and click on the configure cog icon over here. Let me make this a little bit bigger, make sure everybody can see that okay. Maybe one more, how's that? So you've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tabs currently. And there are some other tabs that we're looking at that will give you some additional features in the future, but this really is the crux of how you set up a net. So if you, let me back up just real quick. There's a button up here if you have privileges to be able to create a new net. So that's limited to at the area level. And so if you want a new radio net, you would go back and talk to your area specialist or those that have been designated by the area specialist as area admins, or the ERC help desk can also help you interface with the area people. So if you want a new radio net added, just send an email to helpdesk@ercconnect.org and say, I'd like a new radio net for the Southeast area, for the Southwest area, or whatever. And here's who the net manager is. And they'll verify with the area that they're good with that net being created, create the net, and then now the net manager can get in and start making changes. So it does require appropriate privileges before you see the add new radio net button. But everybody that's a net manager will have access to configure the nets, which they've been designated as a net manager for. So let's go into the Kevin test. You give it a name. And we associate it with an area just so we can kind of keep track of which nets are with which area. This is where you select the radio service. If it's an amateur net, you select amateur, and this is where it makes sure that the operators have an amateur call sign. The call sign could even be expired. It'll still put them on there, but it'll flag them as being expired or about to expire, or even worse, but it'll put them on there. It can be a GMRS net. It can be a shares net. That's the other special one. It requires a shares call sign before you show up on the roster. MERS, nothing special. It just allows us to kind of categorize MERS. You could use business radios, citizens band. Haven't heard any nets on CB for a while, but we could have some if it's on Starlink. And again, these are really kind of help at this point anyway, just to categorize them. Selecting one of these might mean something in the future, but at the meantime, they're primarily just kind of to categorize the net, except for the exceptions that I just told you. We support both miles and the metric system in kilometers because we've got our friends up in Canada. And so if we want certain things that show up in distance, we would select kilometers, but defaults to miles because most of our operators are in the United States. You can put a frequency, whatever you want for the frequency. The frequency is not, you don't have to enter like a real number for a frequency. You can type whatever makes sense. Different nets have different ways to do that. If this is, for instance, a GMRS net, you might see, say, channel 3 for your frequency, okay? And channel 10 for the backup, for example. It's just a way to, was there a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. Is there a place for mode, like digital versus voice?
There's not currently, but the reason why is because we forgot to add it, because it's actually been in the database for the last 22 years. But it didn't make it on here. So there may be some new things that show up. And when we make changes, we plan to email like all the net control operators and the managers that there's some new information. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is even though you can type whatever you want here for like a frequency, we've thought about adding kind of another field right below that is an actual frequency that requires like a whole or a real number. So 6.520. Well, I'm typing on my keyboard, it's not showing up anywhere because there's not anything up here. But the idea would be that if we had another field here, that it would be smart enough to know that that's a 2 meter in the 2 meter band. And so we're still kind of talking the pros and cons. We've not had that in the past, but we've talked about, okay, maybe we want to have a band that these are on just to help in some of the reporting and things. So I guess the key takeaway is we're going to continue to kind of tweak this a little bit. So if you see new things show up, we'll let you know if there's something else we want. Or we also might have the help desk team go in there and put it in for you, or we can see that your frequency is 146.52 and you might have some other, you might have megahertz. And you might have like, oops,
Kevin,
yes,
up in the description of the net at the top, where you'd have net name, that's where we put digital or IRLP or wherever else. Is what we've been doing now.
that's true. You could, yeah, that's a good point. We've been putting it in we had a field there, but yeah, you can put it up in the title of the net, the net name. So it could be the Kevin test,
Digital net. Or
yeah, whatever digital.
JSA call. Whatever.
Yeah, I was trying to think JSA call. You don't need to type the word net. In fact, it's going to strip that off if you do, because it will add the word net wherever it needs to. So just type in the name without the word net. And it'll wherever it lists it, and we need to add the word net, we will. But so you can put that in that title. It makes it easy to kind of find those and provide a description, especially those people that might be on more than one net. But you can type in this frequency things like this. We don't often do this, but I guess on 5.2 we still could have QRM. Let's see. Days before inactive, you can change this on a per net basis. So there's a filter when we get on the roster. If you want to filter those that have not been checking in recently, inactive, the inactive cutoff you can say is 30 days. So after 30 days, if they haven't checked in within 30 days, they'll disappear, or you can make it within 60 days. The default is 60 days, but you can make it up to 128 days if you want. So I'll just leave that at 60. This means that you can actually start putting it together, but you don't want to make it active yet for anybody to be able to get to or to show up on any list. So you can make it inactive while you're working on it. There's also something called visibility. So in some of the things coming with the new website, and actually still even with the old website, we will make nets that are applicable to a specific user. They will show up. And if you want to, for whatever reason, create a net that you don't want to have show up on any of those lists, but you can still get in here and manage the net, you can make it hidden. So it's not going to show up on the website anywhere as a net. So it can be an active net, but you're kind of hiding it so it's not showing up as one of the nets for the area or a coordinating council or a stake or whatever. So you can hide it. That's what the visibility is. And the inactive just means nobody can get to it. But you can have it active, but hidden. So that's why there's the two statuses. One status for active and inactive, and one whether or not that shows up. Any questions on this tab? Okay. Let's go to the schedule. So this, I think, is fairly self-explanatory. When do you hold your net? Is it every week on a specific day, in a specific time, in a specific time zone? Or do you have it like on, we worked with somebody yesterday, was on the first Thursday of every month. Okay. So you can set the first Thursday of the month and you can set the time. And select your time zone, or you can make it the second and the fourth Tuesday, same thing. Or I know some stake nets, they hold it on the first and the last Sunday of the month. So there you go. You could hold it on the fifth, the fifth week, certain day. It's not going to be every month even. So however you want to do that, it supports. anything from once a week. We don't support more than once a week. It just started getting too complex, and and that's a rare thing to do it more than once a week. Not that anybody can't, but there's the other way you would do it. If you do have a net that for whatever reason you are calling more than once a week, I would create one on Wednesday, and I would create another net with a similar name for the Thursday, and put in the name that this is the whatever Wednesday net or the Thursday net, and then in the schedule you could schedule that way, and then you could still have. It's basically two different nets, but it would allow you to at least call the nets, and you would have the capability to do that. Any questions on the scheduling?
Question.
Yeah.
What about like asynchronous nets where you're taking check-ins? Again, thinking about digital JSA call, that you're taking check-ins kind of during a period.
So good question. So the way that we've done it in the past, when we've been using this, is we will create one like for a week, and this, you can schedule it maybe on whatever the start period is for that net. So if it starts on a Saturday, for example, you would start it on a Saturday, and you can just kind of leave that net open, and as people check in, you can come in here and log them in. And then you can go on to the next week, and then you've got a record for each week. So that would be one way.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. This is actually really complex, but we try to make it easy, I think, up front here. And this is where I was showing you. You've got, we divide this drop-down list from the standard church organizations of area, coordinating council, stake, or ward. This is where if you got a stake net, you can come in here and you can search for any stake in North America, and it's in here, unless it was just made here within the last few weeks, or any coordinating council, or any of the areas. So area, coordinating council, stake, or ward, those are the standard organizations. So if that's what this net is, it's really easy to set that up. If it's a group like we talked about, the group has to already be created. In other words, if it doesn't show up here, you need to go back to probably the ERC help desk. So help desk at ERCconnect.org, and ask for a new coordinating council group. Tell them the name you want it, the coordinating councils you want in it, and they'll reach out to the area to make sure that that's something that the area is in agreement with. And then they'll create that coordinating council group. And then once the group is created, it'll show up here. So you can see we don't have a lot of coordinating council groups, but it's also a relatively new thing for us. So if it doesn't exist, that means it's got to be created. The same thing with a state group. For those who are familiar with the old regions within storehouses, a state group is the exact same thing as a region. We're just not using the term region. We're calling them state groups because the region is not used consistently. It's kind of an older term. It's still used within the church and in different places, and it means different things in different areas. For instance, in the Utah area, they are creating what are essentially multi-coordinating council groups, but they're calling them regions. So a stake group is just a group of stakes. A ward group is just a group of wards, and the only one in here was one that was set up for testing. So there's no other official ward groups yet. I know some that are coming, but there's none that are in there yet. Stake group, again, these are the old regions. If you need a stake group, just let the help desk at ERCconnect know, and they'll create a group for you. Or the area administrators, area website administrators also can create those groups. And then we get to the special net type of manually selected operators. Just means that they all come down here from the manually selected operators. So this is all the operators in the ERC system. You can start typing in a name or a part of a name. If I type in Joe, there's all the Joes. So you can type that. You can type in a call sign, find whoever you want, and then they'll jump in. And so you just start adding people, and these are the people that are going to show up on your roll. They're just manually selected. So if a net type is down here under special manually selected, they're all just coming from the net. There's no automatically selected other than the net control operators. But if you go up here and you say, okay, I want to do a coordinating council, not a group, I'm just going to say a coordinating council net, select your coordinating council. We'll just select the North Dakota Bismarck coordinating council. All of these people will show up automatically. And then in addition to those automatic ones, these people that you put in manually will show up also. Does that make sense? So you got the people that are selected automatically, and then these people that we're adding to it that aren't automatically selected. So you don't want to put people in here. They're not going to show up twice if you do, but you shouldn't. Don't put somebody on the manually selected if they're automatically going to be selected from the automatic selection, if that makes sense. This shows you, well, this is a fictitious net, so nobody's ever checked in, but it's kind of a tool for the net managers. You can see the last time people have checked in. In fact, let me just show you since we're talking about this. I'm going to go out to a real net and select the North America, Idaho area HF net's been around for a while. And if we look at the net participants, it is all manually selected operators. There's 191 operators on this roll. Here's a feature that's on everywhere that uses this type of a list in the website. If I grab this handle here, so if I mouse over, you see the two double arrows light up. And if I click on that and drag, I can make this longer so I can have more room to work with. And then you can kind of scroll up and down. If I move my mouse outside of this container here, then I'm moving the whole web page up and down. If I'm inside this container, then I'm just moving it, or this container, I'm just moving it. So where your mouse is, and it makes a difference as to which scroll bar or which scroll if you're using your mouse scroll, which is how I'm moving this, just using the mouse scroll. So it sizes both of these the same, so I can grab either one of these and it kind of makes them a little bit larger. But you see the check-in date here. If I sort these by clicking on it in an ascending fashion, we can see this guy has not checked in since 2008. So he's probably a candidate to be removed. But with the legacy system, you couldn't really see when the last time they checked in, which is one of the reasons I think why we have 191 people on this net. Now you can kind of get a better feel. And this is how all the sorting works on the website, and anything new that's coming up is, let me go back to the default sort. If I click on it once, you see the up arrow means it's ascending. If I click on it again, it goes down, means it's descending. So the largest going to the smallest. And if I click on it a third time, it goes back to the natural sort that came in. So all of these work that have a sort. We didn't provide, yeah, we need to turn the sort on for those, but so you can sort by username if that's helpful. The username, if you have an amateur radio call sign, is your call sign. If you're not an amateur operator, you're going to have another username. The new standard is basically first initial, last name, or it starts kind of helping to create a unique way to do that. But you can sort by name, and they're listed by first name and last name. So however you want to look at them, and then you can always do the search. So if you want to try and find somebody, or if you just want to sort and look through them, this is how you manage all of the manually selected operators. And again, manually selected might be only manually selected, or it can be automatically selected and manually. Basically, you get the best of both worlds, where you can bring everybody in automatically and then add to them anybody that you want to add to the net that isn't normally there. It adds a little bit of, where's the color? Well, somewhere along the way we deleted the little flag, but these are color coded, so you can see.
Reverse your selection. You're at the newest check-ins.
Well, oh, that's true. That's what. Oh, never mind. Thank you. So they are there. I thought we'd made a mistake and missed them. So these guys are all within 60 days. That's why they don't have a flag. And the yellow ones are it's been at least 60 days. So 2 to 3 months since they've checked in, and then from 3 to 6 months they turn orange. And then it's been more than 6 months, they turn red. So it's up to each net, how you want to manage it. And if you want to permanently take people off the roll. If you do delete somebody off the roll, it's not a big deal to bring them on. Almost deleted a real net. Let me go back to our sample here. So yeah, if you delete somebody and you want them back, you just go back in and add them back in. So it's really easy to take people on or off the net from the manually selected. Automatic ones happen automatically. If they're manually, it's easy to go either way. Any questions on the net participants?
Quick question on the groups. If you make a group, it shows up for the whole system, right? Across
Yes.
America and Canada. So you'd be sorting through them eventually if there's that many groups created.
That's true. If there was a bunch of them in, but we'll still have this sort feature. So even if there is 3,000 of them, like there are awards, you can easily search for them, and so you can find them pretty quickly. Once they're in the system, yeah, they're in the system for anybody that might, but they're probably not going to be outside of your area that's going to use that group. But they could.
All right, thank you. And on the Warden stake nets, that still has area approval to get any of the Warden stake nets set up?
Yeah, so they will either do it for you, or if you just reach out to the help desk, they will set it up and then turn it over to the net manager to go. And basically all you need to tell them is that you want a net and who, or a group, and what kind of group it is, who the wards or stakes or coordinating councils are in the group, and then who's the net manager, so that somebody can go in there and start laying it out.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Okay, let's go to the roster layout. Things start getting real fun now. So this is all of those standard column types that I said you can choose from. So the check-in, you see it's kind of grayed out here because, let me make it a little bit larger here, because you need the check-in in order to check somebody in. So it's always on every single roster. From then on, it's all customizable, whether you have it enabled or not, by just doing the check marks. This doesn't change the order. The order is when you actually get on the roster, you can move the columns around. This just enables whether or not the column shows up. And this is going to enable it to show up for all the net control operators. So in other words, whatever you put on this roster, everybody gets the same information. It's just the net control operators can change how it looks for them. But as far as what goes on there, that's up to you, the net manager. So emergency power, I mentioned around here, we've made it kind of a standard thing. You can say, I want it or don't want it. You just turn it off. But the name and everything and how it works is just standard. So with some of these, there's additional logic behind how some of them work. Other things that it's just collecting the data, but for emergency power, you're just making that column show up or not. Amateur suffix is just what it says. It's the everything after the number of a call sign for an amateur call sign, and it can be very helpful if you call a net. So, for instance, if you've got a coordinating council net and you call by stake and you're asking, okay, everybody in the south stake, check in with your call sign. And then after you're acknowledged by the net control operator, you can provide the rest of your report. And then the net control operator only has to listen for the suffix. It makes it easier to call a net that way. And so even the paper copies that we have that you can print out for offline use, or some prefer to record their nets all on paper first, which is just fine. It's nice to have the suffix on there, because it just makes it easy to quickly find an operator. We provide the same thing if you do a GMRS net. If it is a GMRS net, take off the amateur one. It's illegal for amateur and GMRS, even though you could set up a crossband repeat on a Chinese radio and you could make them talk. Technically, it's against the regulations to do that. You can't cross GMRS and amateur, so that's why if it's GMRS, I take off the amateur call sign and just put the GMRS call sign on there. Is my recommendation. And it does the same thing with GMRS. The GMRS, the suffix, is the numeric part of a GMRS call sign. There also is a shares suffix and call sign. So if it's a shares net, you can do the same thing. And you can do either a full name, which is first name and last name put together as one column, or if you want to be able to call a net and you want to see the first and last name on separately, so you could maybe sort them by first or last name, you can make them two separate columns. So same information, one is two separate columns, and full name is just like it says, it's first and last name. This is the beam heading from the net control operator to the operator on the roll. And so if you are different net control operators, if you put these columns on the roll, you're going to see different information because you're located at different spots, and it's doing the calculations based on everybody's information as stored in the ERCconnect database. So we geolocate every address, and every time anybody changes their address, it updates the geolocation in the system. And so that's how we calculate the beam heading and the distances in miles. And that's where the basic data information, if you change it to kilometers, that distance will show up in kilometers as opposed to miles. It's nice. I just leave those on there for fun. If it's a stake net, you probably don't need to have the stake or your coordinating council or area. If you want to, you can, but you're probably more interested in the ward. If it's a coordinating council net, you're probably more interested in the stake. If you want to put the ward on there, you can. If it's a multi-coordinating council, or there could be people in there from another area, we have some nets that are kind of close to people are in different actual areas, but they're participating in the same net. You might want to put area on there. So you can make all of those, area coordinating council, stake and ward if you want. You can make them all show up. Storehouse is there if you want it. The problem with Storehouse is it's a legacy thing. That's why it's on here. And the data that we receive from church headquarters currently does not have the storehouses associated like the stakes. And so we have to manually go in there and associate a stake with the storehouse. So storehouse, unless it's already been associated, it may not be helpful for you. In fact, your storehouse may not even be in the system. If you want to, and their storehouses are not gone, there's still equipment and resources at a storehouse. If storehouse is important to you, we can make sure that all the stakes in your area, your coordinating council or multi-coordinating council are associated with the storehouse, and then they would all show up. So if you need storehouse for some special need, we can make sure that data shows up. We just have to verify that it's all there, and it's kind of a manual process as opposed to the other things that we have, like all this warden stake coordinating council is all automatic for us.
Kevin, comment?
Yes.
You talk fast. So by having both for example, in a stake net, you would want the ward in there, because if you call the stake net by ward,
Yes.
then you can sort by ward.
Yes.
So hopefully that explains what you can do with any one of those columns.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point.
That's why you have it.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. So yeah, if you're at the stake level, you want to see the wards. If you're calling a coordinating council net, you definitely want to see the stakes probably. If it's all one coordinating council, you may or may not want to see the coordinating council show up. Why wouldn't you? Well, it depends on how many other things that you want to put on your roll and how long that roster ends up getting. So you can kind of play with it and just know, yeah, you could check all of these if you want, and they'll all be there. But yeah, you'll end up with a little bit of a mess because there's just so much on there that you probably don't need. So check what you need so it shows what you need. So the rest of these I've named so to give an example, but starting at this one that says right after storehouse, that says check in here. So if I start typing some X's here, you see up here, it starts as I type, they just show up there as well. So this is a custom field. So this one. So yeah, from there to time. So these 6 are custom fields. So the way you make a custom field is you give it a name, and then what kind of a custom field is it? So for our example here, first one we're demonstrating a check-in and a check-out, just to show you the time fields. And then the next one we just called status, and we call it a select box. And we made the selections in and out. Yeah, there's our select box. And over here, you can see a preview of what that looks like. Okay. And out and nowhere. So again, you're just making options for the net control operator to select whatever makes sense. So if you need something that you need to be able to select something, and that's easier than just typing it in, which oftentimes it is, that's where select box comes in. You can always type in or out, but it might be quicker just to have a select box that's you just select it. So that's the benefit of having a select type here. This next one we call tactical identifier, and this might be handy in, I showed you we're going to have an all visitor net, an open net, and you might want to have a tactical identifier on there so that you could, identify that somebody's at a certain location, and then you can make that a simple text because you're just going to type in a name, and then other times maybe you can have something called a location, and if you make that a large text, then you'll get the drop down, and we'll show you what those look like again. But that's the difference, the simple text and the large text. And there's another time field. So that's an example of all these custom fields. I'll show you the traffic count. If you want, you can even display the last date that they checked in. Some people watch that and kind of prioritize how people are on and get checked in. If that matters to you, then you can make last check-in to be a column on the roster. So I'm not sure if we're going to leave these. You can change the color, some of the color schemes on the roster by a per net basis. When we were experimenting with the colors, we'd set things up so we could kind of play with it, and it just changed all the colors so we can kind of look and see what looked good. And then it was actually an accident, if you want to know the truth. Didn't mean to store this on a per net basis, but we did. So right now we've left it. So if you really want to, you could go in here and you could make this hot pink if you want. Don't recommend it, but right now you can change the colors, but we may end up, if it ends up being a problem, we could change that. But that's what the roster color settings are. I wouldn't worry about them unless the colors are really offensive to you. If they are, you can come down here and you can change certain colors that are on that roster. Any questions on the layout? Okay. Net control operators. So this is
one quick question.
Yeah.
The notes section, is that sortable or searchable at some point?
Yes, everything on the roster is sortable. So you can go into the notes column, or you can just search. You can do one search up in the search bar, and it'll search through everything that's on the roster. So yes, everything, including if you make any other that are like text things, you can search through everything that's on the roll.
Outstanding. Thank you.
You bet. Okay, net control operators operate the same way as we were looking at putting people on the roll manually. It's you can search for an operator, and if they're here, they're a net control operator. If you select manager, they're a net manager. Okay, that's all it takes. As soon as you add somebody and they show up here, I don't know, Aaron. Should make that so we can slide that over a little bit, but I don't know Aaron, but Aaron's now a net manager, and he will show up automatically on the homepage as being able to get to manage the nets. If you didn't mean to make Aaron our net control operator, you just delete that. Okay, if somebody says, yeah, I'm gonna go do something else, release me from being a net control operator, no problem. And you see some of these are not amateur call signs. That's because that's my son and that's his wife. And so that's where some of these came from. And so, but if you put them on as a net control operator, even though they're not an amateur operator, it will put them on there because it assumes that you know what you're doing as far as net control operator. So it's the one thing that kind of overrides what's on the roll, even though it's an amateur net. If you put somebody on as a net control operator, for instance, don't know why you'd want to do this, but maybe there's a reason. You could put your bishop in there who doesn't have a call sign, but you could make him a net control operator for some reason. You could do that, and he would be able to go in there and manage nets. Doesn't license him to go out there and talk, but it would get him access to the behind the scenes for things.
Quick question.
Yeah,
You brought up adding your bishop if he's not a licensed operator. If you're sitting with him and you're acting as control operator, couldn't he still do that just to get him
Sure.
involved?
Sure, no problem. Good idea. So absolutely could. So yeah, you can make him a control operator, or he can use your account, whatever you want. It's the important takeaway is it used to be quite a process to set up a net control operator. We had to go add them as an administrative user. We had to give them all the right privileges so they can get into the right nets and things. And it was a bit of a hassle, to be quite honest, if you have not been involved with that. Now it's just click on it and they're done, and any net manager can do that. I recommend, well, you really need at least one net manager so that you can kind of control this stuff, but I recommend having more than one net manager. Could you make everybody a net manager? You could. I don't recommend it, but you could. Why don't I recommend it? Because you can kind of make a mess of things if you're not careful with the net roster and the net participants. If you're not sure what you're doing, you could change everybody that's showing up on the roster. If you don't mean to, you kind of made a mess. Not that it can't be fixed, and you haven't lost anybody's stuff. So if you have 10 years of check-ins and you accidentally set this net to a ward net, and it's been a coordinating council net for 10 years, and nobody's showing up on your roster, don't worry, all the data is still there. And as you come back and set things up till they show up on the roster, it'll all come back. So you don't have to worry about losing anything. Okay, so really easy to add somebody as net control operator, easy to add them as a manager. You know the remove is. Now there's this column here that's called exclude. What is that about? And let me explain. Let's just go down below. Once the operators are selected, this is where you can display if you want them, all the net control operators listed separately on a roster. If you do, click the switch and it takes all the operators that were somewhere on your role probably, and it takes them out of wherever they're at, puts them all up as a group to the top. So if you wanted to like check them all in the beginning of net, for example, that's all it takes is setting. I'll turn that on just for fun. Okay, so now when you're on the roster, you have a drop-down list of the net control operators. So this is who should be in that list. Do you want only the net control operators to be listed? Or do you want all net operators to be listed as a net control operator? There are some nets, ward nets are a common one, where they kind of want all the net operators to be listed. It doesn't give them anybody access to come in unless you make them a net control operator up here. But you could say, hey, if one of the other net control operators doesn't show up, go ahead, anybody, and jump in and call the net. And so you could go back when you fill it out, and you could select one of the operators, even though they're not here. They're an operator on the net, and you could select from them. So again, this goes back to the way some nets are called, and some people might go, why would you want to do all operators? Well, some have their reasons, so that's why there's this option. It's going to default to only net control operators. So now you can schedule net control operators. What does that mean? Not much, really. It's really just a matter of making sure that the net control operators know when it's their turn. If you got multiple net control operators, which hopefully you do, and also to be able to look at a schedule for those. So one of the reports that's coming is a net control operator schedule where you could look like a year in advance, print out a PDF for net control operator, and they can put it up on their wall that says, here's all the dates that I'm the net control operator. And so you can assign net control operators. A common way, probably the most common, is to assign, most nets are a weekly, not all of them. But even if they're not a weekly, you can say on week 1, it's this operator. On week 2, it's this net control operator, and so on and so forth. And so you can schedule them so it's just kind of a consistent. Everybody knows I'm week 1, I'm week 2, I'm week 3. If that's how you do your schedule, you schedule by week. If you don't schedule, you fly by the seat of your pants, as we say in Idaho. You can say only net control, no schedule. Okay, so it's either no schedule, schedule by week, or the way some do it is they schedule by rotation. So if I select rotation, the week configuration goes away, and you can say, here's all the net control operators that I have. What it is, it's a list of everybody that's up here. It just brings them down here. Only you see this little, forget what that symbol's called. That just means you can drag it and you can change the order of the net control operators that you're going to rotate through. And you can say, okay, starting with Nikki Hemsley, that starts on, so can't remember whatever week was, whatever date. We'll call it May 20th. On May 20th, starting on that date, Nikki Hemsley is the net control operator. And it will just start cycling through those, okay? And then you might ask, well, wait a minute, what happens if you don't call a net because it's Christmas Eve or Christmas Day or something along those lines? Well, that's a future option that we have coming, and that's actually one of the tabs that we're looking at adding here, is a skip schedule. It's actually already built, it's already designed, it's built in the database. We haven't built the interface for it yet. But the idea behind the skip schedule will be, one, we have a standard set of, for lack of a better way, I'm just going to call it ERC holidays that are just things like, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, Valentine's Day. Not a good idea to call a net on Valentine's Day. For anybody that's wondering, why not Valentine's Day? It's just not a good idea. If you're young and don't know that, it's a bad idea. And so general conference would be another one. So the spring conference, the fall conference. So it calculates all of the standard list that we've got, and it'll put it on there for your schedule. You have a calendar, and you can go in there and say, okay, yeah, we're going to hold the net then anyway. So you can delete the ones that it's recommending. And then you can add your own dates that you're going to skip for whatever reason. Maybe you're going to have an exercise that day, and so we're not going to have the net because we're having something different, or I don't know, whatever your reason is, you can schedule even a year in advance what days you're not going to hold the net. And so one, it does a couple things. One, it will skip over your net schedule. So when it prints out a schedule of your net control schedule, it will just skip so that it'll keep your net control operators in line, so it just does the next one and the next one, even if you skip a day, if that makes sense. The other thing that it does is the net has the ability to send reminders. Right now, they're email reminders. It's optional. You can turn them on for a net or off for the entire net, or an individual operator can turn them on or off. Right now, the individual operators are turning their net reminders, for example, on or off for all nets. But the plan is to make that so that a net control operator will be able to go in there and say, all right, send me, let me back. Some operators might have multiple nets even on the same night. I do, for example. I've got a ward net, a stake net, of kind of a regional net, and then we have another kind of, I'll call it a multi-coordinating council, which is our old storehouse net that's about to change. So I've got 4 nets on a Wednesday night if I check into all of them. So right now I get 4 different emails the early morning of like on a Wednesday. Well, that's a bunch of email. It's a lot of redundancy. So we're looking at basically consolidating those. So you would get like one net reminder that would give you the details for each of the nets that you're on for that, if that makes sense. And so if you have this skip that I was talking about, where you can skip a net coming, it's going to send out a net reminder. It's going to remind everybody there's no net today or for the next net. And so you don't have to manually go out and send out an email. If you have it in your skip schedule a year in advance, it will send out those notifications in advance with the messaging that you want to have. And so you can kind of automate that stuff, so you don't have to kind of manually do it throughout the year. You can automate it in the future. And so that's one thing that's coming with there's going to be it might be part of this email reminders. This is going to change dramatically, by the way, so I'm not going to do much on that tab. But so that's the net control operators. Does that make sense, where you can do no schedule, or schedule by week, or schedule by rotating them through? And you can drag and drop the order of the operators, and then you can say when that rotation schedule starts, and then it just keeps that rotation up and indefinitely, basically. So that's the net control operators tab. The reminders, I'm going to kind of skip over this because everything on here is some legacy stuff. But bottom line, there'll be a way to enable the net reminders for the net. Include the past week's roster. So in the past, we've included everybody who checked into that net. So it'll send the next week. It'll send the email reminder that there's a net today. Here's who checked in last week, and any notes that were part of the net. So we're kind of looking to see what that looks like, because this is a lot more complex net. So we might have a simplified part of reminder, but I'll tell you that it's funny. I thought when we first started doing these reminders, people are just going to get so tired of these emails, everybody's going to want to turn them off. And some people do feel that way. What's great, whenever we have something happen, and maybe there's an issue with our provider, or we've done something that's caused the email not to go out, we hear about it. Why didn't we get the email reminders? Because people check, they want to make sure that their name showed up, so they check that past week's roster. And so I've been surprised, because I guarantee you, if the email doesn't go out for a reminder for whatever reason, we do hear about it. And so people like that. Some like it, but and some don't, but it just depends. We've had the ability in the past to include certain content. That part's going to go away. It's just something that wasn't used, and we're not going to include it to kind of simplify things. What you see here, the emails are going to look something a lot more similar to what you might see sent out by the church. Different, but very similar. Just so the bottom line is, it should look something like what you would expect the church to send out. So this is 20-year-old technology, where we had a handful of email headers that could go out. But the new one, there'll be kind of a standard header, and you'll be able to change the underlying color, so you can have a different color. So you can define the color for what goes out, and there may be some other images that you could send out. It's kind of a standard for the email reminders that go out. So don't pay too much attention to this. We're still finalizing this. We have a new email management system that we're working on now. This kind of ties into that. And so we haven't made any changes here until we finish that. We are probably a few weeks away from running it through beta testing. So it's actually really close. It's looking pretty nice, actually. And the last tab is the preamble script. And this is where we were playing with before. And this is where you can just type up your preamble. The plan is to have some templates that you can click from. In fact, what we might do is just make it a little bit smarter to say, if this is a stake net, for example, we would just give you a sample template for a stake net preamble script. You can change it to your heart's content, but sometimes when you're setting up a new net, you don't know, where do I start? What do we put in here? Some have very clear ideas of what they want, others don't. And so we're going to have some templates, templates you can choose from, or we might even just put something in, have the system put it on a new net, so you have a starting point, so you can go and create your create your net roster. Or I'm sorry, your preamble script. There are images in here. If you notice, there's two. We're going to change this, but quick behind the scenes. I think I may have mentioned this last night, but this editor is actually a really nice editor. It's one of the most popular editors that's used out there, and it used to be free, except when it became the most useful editor of its type on the internet, they decided, hey, wait a minute, we're missing out on an opportunity to make a couple of dollars. And so they made it so you basically have to subscribe to their system, and you can spend quite a bit of money actually for this, except they made parts of it free still, except the cool parts of being able to have like an image library that you could go and look up images and plug images into it. If you want that, it's going to cost you, $30 to $500 a month. It's like, we don't have much of a budget. Well, actually, we don't have any budget. And so we realized that they had provided a hook into the system that we could write our own. So we wrote our own image library. I actually like it better than the one that comes with it. And so we do have images that you can upload. And so you can put in images, and you can actually drag and drop from your hard drive from your Windows Explorer and drop it onto here if you really want to put a picture. Most of the net rosters don't, but you can. And then you've got some different fonts. You don't go crazy with the fonts. And you've also got, headings that you can make things different formats and different font sizes, etc. And you got font colors. We encourage you not to make this a rainbow of fancy stuff, even though you can. Try and keep it, even though this is not professional, but kind of a little bit professional, so that it looks like something we have. You can also take it to be a full screen editor if you really want to. So that is the basic configuration for setting up a net. When you're done, remember to update the net. There are some things in here that actually happen as soon as you do them, but just because it's easier for management of the interface. So in other words, some of these changes we make, it's actually recording on the backend database the moment you make the change. But just remember, hit update just to make sure everything gets in there that you want to be. There's also an option to delete that net if you have the privilege to delete. So make sure you don't delete something that you didn't want to, because this delete, it gives you a warning, but it deletes the net, which is all this configuration that we're showing you here tonight. And if there is 20 years of check-in records, all those attendance records will be deleted. Okay. Is that dangerous? It is. So be careful when you have net manager privileges. Be careful who you give net manager privileges to, because you can do things that kind of can make a mess of things. But that's we have to kind of do some of that stuff. And some cases it makes sense. So if you can create a net, you can delete. If you can't create one, I don't think you should be able to delete it. I'll double check that, but that's what that's all about. With that, we'll just go in there and take another quick look at this is the net that we were configuring. Here's the roles. As a net manager, you see the same thing as a net operator. You got a calendar of whenever you had roles, and it turns blue. The current date is the kind of the yellow color. So here's the 14th. And we created dates or roles on the 12th and the 9th. And here's just some past ones down here if you don't want to look at the calendar, but I'll just pick one and it'll go in. And let me get back from blowing our screen up. We have a bunch of columns in here, so we've made it a little bit long. So I always like to take the flags column, and I like to put it at the end. That was kind of the design of it, is to just leave your flags at the end. But whenever you put a new column up, the new columns, it doesn't know exactly where to put them, so it just adds them to the end. So I added the distance in miles just to show you what those look like. But As a net manager, you've got some things in here that you also need to know about. Make sure that right here, you see this column, it's being cut off because the column width is too narrow. So if I just drag and move it over, if I move it clear over, I see amateur call signs as 2 words. If I slide it in, they will wrap. So you can fit that in. Let me just refresh this. Okay, there we go. So there's the suffix. A good practice is to think about, what do you ask operators to check in with? What items of information? If you put those items that you're requesting up here, they're all right close together. So if you happen to be using this, while you're calling the net, you've got, let me drag this a little bit. Let me show all operators. I got more room to work with here. You can put these so that, that they're just right close together. So you can put them in. So I recommend whatever you're having them check in with, move those columns so they're kind of together. If you don't like that way, you don't have to. If in fact, if you're asking for a lot, but you kind of want to see their call sign suffix and the call sign, you don't want that too far away from where you're checking in. If this is an amateur net, for example. And you might want the name over there next to the call sign. So lay things out in a logical way that makes sense to you. Make sure that the column widths are, I would get them close, but make sure that nothing's getting cut off. Now, your screen might have a different resolution, and so what you see is not necessarily what all the other net control operators are going to see. That's why each of them can further change it. But as the net control manager, you should go in here and lay this out how you think it should be laid out, okay? And once you get it exactly like you want it, so, one good thing is if you have like area, coordinating council, stake, and ward, that's kind of a good way to lay those out. So if you're only going to show stake and ward, you can start smallest to largest. Or if you want, you can go the other way. You can have area first and coordinating council and stake, or depending on which columns you put there. Lay it out how you want. Once you get it like you want it, including the column widths and the column order, so drag and drop those column widths. The other thing that you can save for everybody is if you turn the clocks on, and we save this as the default for the net, the clocks get saved as on. If you say, well, I'm just going to let every operator do it themselves, you can save it with the clocks off. The compass, it doesn't save the compass, it just leaves the compass, because it's kind of a one of those things that is not necessarily that helpful depending on your kind of net. It's kind of fun, but we just leave that one totally up to the operator. But as far as saving the default, clocks are savable by the net manager. The other thing is, and let's just go in here to the options here. And okay, so we've got, this is a good example here. So if we want to sort by area, see what happened? What are all these blue bars? The blue bars is because this was set up to put in a group separator row every time the stake changes. Well, if we sort by coordinating council, it kind of makes a mess of things. So I'm just going to go in here and let's turn it off for right now while we kind of play with this. I'll save it. And now we don't have any separator bars. But let's say if we want to sort by area, and if I want to open, you see how the area, the A is getting partially cut off. So I might want to make that a little bit bigger. If I hold the shift key down and then click on coordinating council, it'll sort first by area. And because it's put a number 1 in there, showing you it's first by area, it's put a 2 on coordinating council because we're sorting next by coordinating council. Whoops. So now it's got all the central areas, and I'm up here on the net control operators, so they're kind of separate. That's why you see a shift from central to northeast, and then we see all the centrals. It's because it's made all of these net control operators all by themselves, but we haven't put any separator bars, so you can't really know that they're separate. But you do see the net control operators up here, but you don't see a separator bar when everything else starts. So we can say, all right, let's put a separator bar in for whenever the area changes. Okay, now there's the central area. And then if we scroll down, then we start seeing the next area clear down here, which is the maybe. Oh. I guess everybody's in the central area. So let's do it this way. Let's go back up. Let's add us, we've got also first by area and then by coordinating council. So if we go in here and say, okay, put in a separator bar every time the coordinating council name changes. Now we can see Rex per coordinating council. Refresh this. Looks like we got show all operators. I think we found a bug. Okay, we'll work on that. Let's go by stake, and then here's a very common one. If you have a coordinating council net, for example, you want to call by your stake, you sort first by stake, and then you want to do, if I hold shift key down and say suffix, now if we go in here and add a separate bar every time the stake changes, now we see the Ammon stake, and then it changed to the Ashton stake, and then it's changed to the Driggs stake. You can see all the Driggs here, and then the Manan stake. Okay, so every time the stake changes, we see a new separator bar. For some reason, the coordinating council one's off, so we'll get that fixed. The other thing that you can turn on or off on this roster options is, besides the separator rows, is the auto advance. So if I turn this off, if I check this person in, oops, I didn't save it. Turn that off and save it. Okay, now if I check somebody in, they're checked in, and if I hit tab, I'll end up on the emergency power, and I can check them in. And if I hit tab, it'll take me to the status field. And if I click on that, I can check in or out. The other thing I can do is if I hit space, I can use the arrow keys down, for example. You can do everything by the keyboard if you want. So if I hit enter, if I click on it or hit space, and then I go to the next field, I hit tab, and I'm on the tactical identifier. And if I hit the next field, I'm in a time field. So the time field, if I check on it, it puts in the current time. If I click on it again, I get the little pop-up where I can change the time, or I can just click on the clock icon and it sticks in the current time. Or if I want to clear the time, I just click on the X and it clears the timeout. Okay. And then if I keep tabbing, I keep going to the next. Some of these are display only. You can see the ones that we fill in because you've got the white behind it. And so you just tab to go between each of the fields. If I keep tabbing, it goes down to the next row. So this option is auto advance to the next field. If I turn that on and save it, now let me clear that out. And if I check this person in, it checks them in and it advances to the next one. If I check, it checks them in and it goes to the next field. If I select this, it automatically goes to the next field. So it makes it kind of quick and easy to fill something out by just going to the next field. If you have that enabled and you save it as the default settings for all the other net control operators, that will be there. By default, on a new net, it's not enabled. The reason we did that is because it's a feature that you can enable, like in Excel, for example. And we thought it would be helpful, so it took actually quite a bit of work to get it working like we wanted it. But I like it. Some people might not like it. They might rather having the control of moving from field to field. And so you can leave it off and let the individual net control operators turn it on, or if you want, you can turn it on. But remember, however you leave these, When you save as the default setting, that's saved for everybody as their default setting configuration. So the clocks, you can configure, what the primary time zone is. Again, these options are selectable and changeable by individual operators, but anything you change as the net manager and save, that will get saved as the default for everybody. Okay. PDF options. This selects which columns show up when you generate a PDF. Because there's not enough room on a sheet of paper to put all the columns that you could put on there. Okay. So here's all the columns that you have to choose from your role, and select which ones you want and save. So again, that becomes if you save those is your option, select those, and then come in here as the default settings as the net manager. When you save as a default, it saves all the PDF options, it saves all the clock options, and it saves all these roster options. In addition, it saves all of the column widths, the column, it's got a little bit of bug. I have to refresh it when I make some of those changes. I'll fix that. But it saves all of these column widths, the column orders. All of these things get saved whenever you save as the default settings. You always want to set up a new net. You always want to lay all this out. You always want to set up a default settings because it makes it better for the net control operators. Because if they come in and they start adding, let's say they add a filter, and I can go here and change the sort order and kind of mess things up. And the other thing is I could come in here and set a filter. So if I go in here to the name and I set if a filter contains Joe, whoops. We don't have anybody named Joe. I thought sure we'd have Joe. John. How about Paul? Okay. Say, Paul, nobody else shows up. It's like, why did everybody go? So you can do a couple things. One, the easy thing, reset the filters. That will clear everything out, even things that might not be obvious. It does show a little filter sign, but sometimes you miss the sorting and the filters that show up. So reset the filters. The other thing that you can do when you mess all this up is come in here and restore to default configuration. And if you set that, all your net control operators can always come in here, restore to default configuration, and they're going to be able to see all everything, and it's going to look nice and be like they want it. So if you always store a default settings, then it just makes it nicer for everybody else, including yourself, to be able to just, oh, I messed it up. Let me just come in here and restore to default configuration. Now everything's back to a known good layout and setup. So once you get it like you want it, always save the default settings so that there's a default settings. Now, when a new operator comes in, all they have is that default settings until they change anything. The second they start changing a column width or a column order, then it will make it theirs and it'll stick however they left it. So if they say, hey, this used to look nice and now it looks terrible, just advise them to come in here and restore to default configuration, and then it'll put it back for you. I think that is about everything. The other things I think we've covered. Go ahead.
Looking at the text on the screen, I know you can enlarge the web page to see better, but is there a possibility of putting a function on there to change the text to bold to make it easier for some people to see on a screen?
We could do that. So one of the things that we have on our wish list that we haven't implemented, and that is the 508 compliance, so that if there are those with certain visual limitations, that we can make sure that, and we haven't run this actually through the settings with our current colors. We should, we haven't yet, but for instance, some people have, I forget what the condition is where they can't see the bright screens, and so they need like a black background, dark, with maybe white lighter colors on the top of the dark. And so on our wish list is to add that for those that might be visually impaired that have maybe that kind of condition. So, but that's a good point to be able to make it so we could change that. That would be an easy thing to add. And we would, if we had that, it would be somewhere here under the options where we would make that an option.
Yeah, looking at the size of the text on the screen right now, I'm like, that would be hard for me to look at.
Yeah, and you can do the Control Plus. The one thing that also is on our wish list, you guys can tell us which. Right now, this is all fitting underneath the framework of this old legacy system. But even with the new system, one feature that we thought might be nice is an expand button here that actually takes it to full screen. So it takes you out of visually out of anything underneath it, and it gives you more screen space. There's pros and cons. If you want to add the compass, for example, you get a little bit of space depending on your screen width size. If you turn on the clocks, and if you want to bring up an operator so you can see, wow, that's an ugly picture right there. We'll pick somebody else, and you want to see their picture. So as you check them in, it'll show you the the updates to their location and things. Why is it my we found 2 bugs tonight. I don't know what happened to the compass. There we go. Okay, we'll dig into that and see why the compass didn't start. But what I did, in case you run into something like that, just you can refresh the page. You're not going to lose anything. Just refresh the page, and that could, if we get any. And if you do run into something, please send a note to help desk at ERC or help desk or what is it? Yeah, help desk at ERCconnect.org. Sorry, it's getting late. And let us know that you ran into an issue, and we'll take a look at it.
Kevin,
Yeah,
did you show the visitor option for under an emergency consideration?
Steve likes this.
I
think
love it.
Yeah, we did this on the last night, in case you didn't see that. If you have any visitors when somebody's checking in, if I go KC7IHB, actually I typed in the wrong call sign. So this is Stanley Payne because I meant to type, whoops, KC7IHB, and there's Steve Taylor. And so the first thing it does when you type, if you're running an amateur net and you type in an amateur call sign, it first looks up to see if they're an ERC operator in the database. If they are, you'll see this little ERC icon show up here. That means that they're an ERC operator, and so it knows what ward and what stake and coordinating council, and it just pulls that all into your roster. If you type in somebody like I typed in last night, K6 ABC, they're not an ERC operator, but they are. It's a valid call sign because it's a Thomas Barrett, and he's in that's the name of the state. You're going to add the state onto here, but we just put it in the stake. We actually maybe I'm not sure. Part of the challenge here is because we're bringing in data, we have to put that data someplace. So right now it's defaulting to the stake to put their location. But this particular roster has a location that we could put it in, but we have to put the data somewhere. Whoops. But anything that you enter on the visitors, it's putting it in there. You can think of it as more of a suggestion because you can override any of the data because it's the visitor, but it just tries to help the net control operator so they don't have to type everything in themselves. It'll just kind of bring them in. So I mentioned that we have a net type that's all visitors basically. And so that's where it's really nice. So you don't have anybody up here. This grid up here basically goes away, and it doesn't say visitors. It's just your net. And as you start typing people in, it starts putting them in here. So if you type somebody in and they're already on this grid up here, it'll say, oh, they're already checked in. So he's already checked in above. And so it says it's a duplicate entry. So the visitor entry is going to be removed. So it pulls that out. If you have, well, let me show all operators, and I'm going to just pick somebody here that if we filter based on active, that operator doesn't show up. I can't see them because they've been filtered out because they haven't been checking into a net. If I don't see them and I come down here and just type that in, hit the tab, it'll say, oh, the operator is not visible, meaning they're not visible up here. This operator, to give you the name, is in the operator list above, but is not currently visible because the active only filter is on. Would you like to check them in and remove the visitor entry? So if you say yes, check them in, it checks them in up here and it deletes them from down here. It just tries to be a helper to the net control operator.
Question.
Yes.
I know that you can add people in visitors who are not in ERCconnect, but can you have somebody on your role who is not in ERCconnect?
That is an excellent question, which has come up a couple times this week, actually. Currently, no. It was designed around having, if they're checking in regularly, there's a lot of benefits to putting them in ERCconnect. And then the question comes of what if they don't want to be? We can look at that and look at the what the implications are to doing that. So right now, it's with a visitor, but right now, if you want them to be permanently on the roster, we do need to put them in. And so, and we discussed this briefly last night. So the question is, well, do they need to be a member of the church? No, they do not. We actually have quite a few people in the system who are not members of the church. There's actually a flag on the backend database that we can flag whether or not they're a member. We don't use it for anything, but we have the ability to see that. We didn't know if we ever going to need it, so there's actually a flag for that. But we can make somebody a member of the website, even if they're not a member of the church. In fact, I mentioned last or Tuesday night, I mean, that some of our best net control operators have not been members of the church, but who have had a desire to help out and be involved with the ERC program in the church. And so we invite everybody. And so I don't know if that's why you're asking, but currently, no, they do need to be, brought onto the system, which is another part. If you want to create a new net, this doesn't currently exist. Step number one is really to get people added to the system through the invitation system so that we can get them onto the system. And then once they're there, it gives us all kinds of additional information, including where the operators are. And remember, the purpose is to help us to prepare for actual emergencies. And one of the things that's quite helpful is to know where these operators are, whether they're a member or not. And so if we get them into the system, we geocode rather their address, and they can be mapped. So we can generate maps on the administration side. And the maps are actually going to be coming to the regular website as part of the new design. And so stake and ward specialists and others will be able to see the maps, and even operators, I think, are going to be able to look at the maps. And I don't know if we're going to limit down to certain areas that you can see, but I don't think so. I think we're going to allow you to kind of look at the maps in different locations and see things. But that's the long answer. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I have one more real quick one.
Sure.
Can I have somebody on my role for example, if I have a stake net, I have somebody who's not a member of the church who's been checking in regularly, but he lives across the valley from me. He's not anywhere near my stake. Am I able to keep him on my roster?
That's a really good question. So yes, here's what I would do is when we set them up, I would set them up in their actual ward and stake, and the help desk team can help make sure that they can look it up and see what stake and ward they're in. But once they're an operator in the system, if you remember, let me go back here. We can go, and even though they're not going to show up, whoops, too far. Let me get back into my test. Even though they won't show up automatically, because you've set that up as a stake net, and he doesn't live in your stake, for example, he's not going to show up automatically. But since he's an operator in the system, you can come down here and find him, and you can add him. And when you do that, let me go back into what happens is it mixes those that are put into the roster automatically with those that we're putting in manually. The only way that you can tell is to look over here, and you can see there's a flag, which is the plus sign. If I hold my mouse over for the tooltip, additional radio operator. That means that is an operator that's been added as an additional operator to the net. Okay, so that would allow you, if you put him on the system, it's best to put him in the stake that he lives in the ward, even though he's not checking into those nets. And then you can still add anybody from any stake or ward onto your net roster, and he'll show up just like everybody else. You'll see what stake and ward he's actually residing in, but he'll still show up on your net. Does that answer your question?
Kevin, has it gotten any easier to get people on the ERCconnect site?
So it still requires the vetting, the validation. And so right now it's the invitation where we send them an email, and all they have to do is click on the link. They fill out their information, comes in. We just review it to make sure everything is complete, and it gets approved, and they're on the system. It's actually, we can add somebody in a couple of minutes. It's really easy.
So do they have to request the email, or are we able to do it for them?
We do it for them. That's the
No. For example, we have people that moved into our ward, and instead of making them go through the process, can I ask for an email to be sent to them?
Yes.
Great. That makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, we actually don't let people request themselves. It's part of the kind of the vetting. So the idea is, in general terms, we don't always know who some of these are when we come in when they do the final check. They're just making sure all the data is good. But basically we kind of, and somebody asked Tuesday, what's the criteria? We need to kind of capture that in writing or some kind of guideline. But we don't have it hard and fast. We just kind of want to know that is this somebody that wants to help out and be involved with the church if they're not a member? That's not a problem. But somebody that just shows up one time, we don't want to just add them to the roster. We can always add them as a visitor. But if they're showing up regularly and we think they're a good individual and we want to add them, then let's add them to the system. And so right now it's been left up to the area leadership for the ERC area managers or area specialists on who has net or invitation privileges. We've been talking about possibly allowing all of the net control operators or at least the net managers. Maybe it'd be better to limit to the net managers, but allow the net managers to be able to send out the invite. But the invite is you put in their name and you know what area this is they're going to be a part of, and their email address. And the other piece is that we're looking at actually it's the legal issues right now. The technical piece is already done, but we want to be able to send them a text message because some people aren't looking at their email because their mailboxes are full and they just don't want to look at the 10,000 old messages. And so it's actually become a problem. So we have a bunch of people now that have been invited, but they're just not looking at their email and clicking on it. So step number one is making sure that the person we want to invite is okay and that they're looking for the email and they know they've got, it's a time limited of like 10 days. We want them to click on it, respond within 10 days, and then we get them on the system. But as long as they know that it's coming and we send the message, the invite, they can be on the system and running here in very short order.
Okay, Kevin, do we do that to the help desk at ercconnect.org, or do we do that some other way? It used to be that we had to send the email to Steve.
Yeah, no longer do you need to send an email to Steve. Steve can do it for the central area, but Steve has also designated people within the central area who can do the invites. So in other words, the central area specialist, so in the central area, that's Steve, he can designate anybody he wants to have invitation privileges.
Right. So who do I send an email to request privileges for Charles Milstead?
So for right now, you can send it either to Steve or you can send it to the help desk, and the help desk will help out with that.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Yeah, it's not we're not being super strict. We have not ever had any problems. We are seeing a lot more operators come on the system. So, the churches just wanted to be careful with who we allow into the system. And we also allow access to contact information for all the operators that are in the system. So
Is there a way to make the stuff that is not privileged information be available to the normal public? For example, a lot of the videos, if you're going to put everything up on YouTube, that is great. I've been referring everybody to that, but not everything gets there. For example, you have a lot of old training and other things that aren't there yet. So will you ever separate that so that we can have the privileged information that we can give out, by people that are invited, but the other information that we deem really exciting, like the one you just did, the ERC changes, I mean, that is worthy of, in my opinion, distributed to everybody in the area. But
that's a good question. Right now, we haven't done that. We weren't quite sure what to expect with the with YouTube videos. In fact, initially it was a closed YouTube site, but YouTube limits a lot of things that were not very nice for us. It wasn't a very comfortable way for us to manage things being completely closed. And so it's open, and it's not as long as you have the link, you can get to it. So it's a little bit closed, but as long as you have the link, you can get to it. There's no other limitation. But that's a good question. I don't know the answer because some of the material it
for
definitely talks
example,
about.
Kevin, your PowerPoints and things like that. I mean, you have done excellent work. Okay, you meaning you ERC people, right? And that stuff should be available to people that don't necessarily need the privileged communication of the roll calls and things like that.
So anything that you see that's like the slides, that's all available. You can share the link and they can get to it. So that part's already there. Does that make sense?
Sorry, my mic was off. I was saying yes.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
All right. I've gone way over on the time, but I've been quite thorough. This is our first time to go through a training for the net management. We wanted to give the net managers all the best background that